Well, here we are up on Ilkley Moor with the Cow and Calf rocks behind us. And the name of Ilkley Moor is known by millions throughout the world simply because of this song on Ilkley Moor Baht'at, one of the hit songs of history and probably the best known dialect song in the whole world, apart from, for example, Auld Lang Syne in Scots dialect. But it comes as a surprise to Yorkshire people, even as a shock perhaps. They even regard it with disbelief when you tell them that its origin is not in Yorkshire but in Kent. Because the tune at least was written by a Canterbury boot and shoemaker, a man called Thomas Clarke, and he was a conductor of Methodist choirs. Now, although Thomas Clarke was an experienced musician, he was illiterate until the age of 28. And the man who taught him to read and write was a schoolmaster in the village of Cranbrook in Kent. And in 1805, one of the tunes that Clarke composed, he named in honour of this schoolmaster, and he called it Cranbrook. And that's the tune that we sing. It originally was, of course, used as a hymn tune. And the first words sung to it were written by Dr. Doddridge, who'd been a friend of John Wesley's. And the previous century, John Wesley had encouraged his people to, as he put it, sing lustily, sing with dignity, but sing with all their heart and soul, especially when they sang in the open air. And this is the kind of thing you would have heard when the tune was first published. Something like this. Grace, 'tis a charming sound, 'tis music to mine ear. Heaven with the echo shall resound, heaven with the echo shall resound, and all the earth shall hear, and all the earth shall hear, and all the earth shall hear. So there it was, a hymn tune, and it became very popular, and other words were sung to it, for example, "Oh, for a Thousand Tongues" by Charles Wesley, and especially "While Shepherds Watched Their Flocks by Night," which is a great favourite in Yorkshire. And then we think from about 1850 we can place it. It couldn't have been much before then, but in the late Victorian period there was a choir outing. And for linguistic and topographical reasons I've gone into in this book, we think these choir singers came from the Halifax area. And they would follow the traditional routes, starting at Dick Hudson's, and they would walk over the moor, and as they walked, they sang. We've got to remember, especially in those days, choir outings meant singing without hymn books, without hymn sheets. They just sung for the pleasure of it. Another thing that was very common on choir outings, people did a bit of courting. In fact, I did some of my own courting more than 50 years ago now it would be, as I look back, on a choir outing. And it was very common for people to wander off and do a little bit of canoodling. And one couple, when they returned from courting, had their legs pulled by their fellows in the choir, and they said something to them like this: "Hey, we were to barn when I saw thee. Where were you going when I saw you wandering off to do your courting?" A later version was, "Where hast to been? Where have you been since I saw you?" Which isn't quite as logical. It would be originally, the oldest version, "We were to barn." It's an old Viking word actually in dialect. "We were to barn when I saw thee on Ilkley Moor Baht'at." That means without hat. In those days everybody wore a hat. But this lad, because he knew he was going off to do a bit of courting, or perhaps because he lost it during a romp in the heather I don't know, but he was without a hat, and in those days if you went without a hat you might catch cold. That's bound to catch the death of cold. And then of course he would die, then we'll let her bury thee, bury him on the moor, and then worms will come and eat thee up. People were more familiar then with the idea of worms eating corpses, because there was no cremation. You see the term used in hymns sometimes, the worms destroying the body. And then of course the ducks, then ducks will come and eat up worms. Why did you think of ducks? Perhaps it's seen some on Ilkley Tarn, as I've seen ducks on Ilkley Tarn. Then we shall come and eat up ducks, then we shall all have eaten thee. That's where we get his own back. This fascinating cycle, even Shakespeare used this actually in Hamlet, the idea of, you know, the life cycle. But it was just a Victorian leg pull. They were just having a bit of fun, and I think it would have just disappeared from history if they'd put these words to any other tune, but they chose this. We're what a barn when I saw thee on Ilkla Mooar, Baht'at. We're what a barn when I saw thee. We're what a barn when I saw thee on Ilkla Mooar, Baht'at. On Ilkla Mooar, Baht'at. On Ilkla Mooar, Baht'at.